Want to stay up to date with everything that's happening on the show? Or do you have a story that you'd like to submit for one of our Listener Stories episodes? You can get in touch with the show via the website at www.hauntedukpodcast.com, on Instagram at hauntedukpodcast, on X at hauntedukpod, or you can email us at contactus@hauntedukpodcast.com. We're also on Facebook and TikTok. And if you want to support the show, you can do it via either Patreon or Ko-fi. Both platforms have exactly the same content, but work in slightly different ways. One of the advantages of Patreon is its sleek user interface, but if you want to avoid those pesky additional charges Apple, Google, and Patreon apply to your subscription, then why not give Ko-fi a try? Simply open a browser window and type ko-fi/Haunted UK Podcast. That's Ko-fi/Haunted UK Podcast, and you'll soon find us. Whichever platform you choose, we're sure you'll enjoy the bonus content. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the episode. This is the Haunted UK Podcast's Short Haunts. Welcome, dear listeners, to our series of short haunts, a shot of scary, just for you. So grab a hot chocolate, maybe a tea, maybe something stronger, because this is Haunted UK Podcast's Short Haunts, spirits in the house, or in the witness. The places in which we grow up will always be closest to our hearts, and where we ultimately feel the safest and most secure. It often feels that nothing could possibly spoil the cozy feeling of the home that holds the memories of all of your birthdays and Christmases. A place that is filled with family heirlooms, hide-and-seek spots, and childhood trinkets. However, when it comes to the paranormal, nothing is ever as secure as it may seem, and in some cases, even the most familiar place can be obscured into something unrecognizable. Our short haunt today has been sent in by Katherine, whose beloved childhood home went from a safe haven to something that may be likened to a doorway to another world, from which multiple entities seem to emerge. Having now moved from the property after living there for over 20 years, Katherine is able to speak about the sometimes sweet, sometimes unsettling, and on some occasions truly terrifying things that herself and her family experienced whilst living there. With that, we hand over to Katherine. Since becoming a regular listener of your podcast, it made me realize I too have a story of my own I'd like to share. I'll warn you now, it's a long one. All happenings occurred in the house I grew up and lived in for over 20 years until finally moving last year. The house itself was a lovely semi-detached build in Surrey and was the perfect place to grow up with my sisters and mum. The strange happenings never really occurred in my younger years. My family nor I remember anything happening before things started to occur often. However, when I reached the formative age of my early teens, around 13 or 14, I really began to notice strange things occurring within the house. My mum has always said I'm a spiritual person, as I often have had orbs in my photographs and experienced shivers down my spine on a regular occurrence. Overall, we had gradually become used to some level of activity in the house. We'd grown accustomed to family pictures falling off the walls around the stairs, keys and other items disappearing and moving, random disembodied footsteps and dark shadows. My sister's makeup products often disappeared from the bathroom shelf, some of which we accepted just weren't coming back. The activity even seemed to occur outside of the boundaries of the house, like the radio of my mum's car turning itself on in the middle of the night, full blast, loud enough to wake us up. It got to the point where we almost became relaxed about it, as it happens so often. Nevertheless, there are key moments that I still find disturbing to this day. The worst of occurrences happened over the span of 2 to 3 days. It began when my sister and I returned home from walking our dog, and when we came into the house, we both heard laughter emanating from a bedroom upstairs. The laughter itself sounded distinctly as if it were coming from a young child. My sister and I were the only people at home at the time, and we truly had no idea what could be causing the sound. Nonetheless, we chose to laugh it off at the time, in an attempt to put each other at ease. There was something decidedly strange about some of the bedrooms, more specifically, my mother's, which seemed to harness an energy unlike the rest of the house. My mother's bedroom had always had an eerie feel to it. We couldn't explain what or why we didn't like the atmosphere it provided. It got to the point some guests of ours would not sleep inside the room and didn't like being in its proximity. As we tried to put this creepy encounter aside, we decided to sit and watch some TV in the living room. We were disturbed by another short but scary flurry of activity from upstairs, specifically from the room directly above us, my bedroom. As we sat, we could trace the heavy thumps of running footsteps across the ceiling, from one corner of my room to the other. We were unsettled by this, as we knew we were still the only people in the house, and furthermore, it would be physically impossible for someone to run across my bedroom along this path. The head of my bed would have blocked the path across the room. If someone had attempted to run from corner to corner, they would have simply run into my bed. My sister and I were completely baffled by this and quite unnerved. But as before, we tried to brush off the experience like we had been able to with the unusual occurrences in the house. But we could only pretend to ignore this unusual surge of activity for so long. That night, following the activity in my bedroom, I had the worst night terror I have ever experienced. I've still not been able to get over it to this day. I startled awake in the early hours, around 2 or 3 o'clock. I awoke screaming with tears streaming down my face. I was convinced that I could hear the sound of a horse's hooves outside my bedroom window. I was petrified, and my mother had rushed in to comfort me. As I rocked in her arms, she herself became worried and afraid, and began to repeat the Lord's Prayer as she held me. I still believe I heard the sound of hooves that night, so incredibly loud outside my window. But who, or what would be out with a horse at such a late hour? And why? The following morning, I'd gone downstairs ahead of my sleeping family to make my breakfast and get ready for school. I was often the only person awake at this time of morning, and so I was used to the house being quiet and empty. I then suddenly had the unmistakable feeling of being watched. The feeling was so intense that as I made my food, I kept turning around to check the room behind me.
Hello?
It truly felt as if someone were in the kitchen with me, watching me. Every time I succumbed to the feeling and turned around, I was met with an empty room. Nobody was there. My acknowledgement of the presence didn't seem to deter it from lingering in the room with me. Then, As I turned my attention back to my food, I felt a hand tap on my shoulder as if to get my attention. Perhaps the entity had become aggravated by my inability to perceive it, and this had encouraged yet another outburst of activity. The disembodied voice of a young girl shouted directly into my ear, as if she were right next to my head. Even stranger and more terrifying was the fact that she had clearly shouted,
Tilly!
the name of our family dog at me. I ran upstairs and told my mum, to which she said, I often hear a young girl giggling and talking to herself. She loves the dogs. I was terrified by this, but thought, the ghost, if that's what we want to call it, must be harmless. From here on, we knew we had the presence of an unknown young girl in our house and learned to live with it. We all had our stories to tell about her. We would come home to be greeted with the sound of her laughter, or we could hear her repeating our dog's name after us.
Tilly!
We accepted her as a fixture of our lives after a while. She lived alongside us and never seemed to cause us any harm or trouble. And then, as we welcomed this little girl into our home, it may have been possible that we also welcomed something much darker into our lives. All of us began to notice a new presence in the house, one that had overall a much more sinister energy to it. It seemed to appear in the hallway, passing the living room as we watched TV. It seemed to roam the house freely and would disappear up the stairs. Incidentally, the same places that our pictures on the walls would often fall, often when nobody was in the house or at night. This shadowy figure began to appear often, wandering the house and making its way upstairs. We got used to it after a while, but the menacing feeling that the figure brought never truly disappeared. We would avoid it around the house, and we would often run up the stairs to get away from it. Aside from the shadow figure and the young girl, we also had the luck of our beloved cat visit us from beyond. He had a brilliant life and sadly passed away in our back garden just outside the shed. A few days after he passed, I was stood in the kitchen looking out into the utility room and garden beyond. I watched a small black shadow of a cat pad down the garden path and disappear into the utility room. I was immediately comforted by this presence. I smiled and thought, there he is, a final goodbye. I was so pleased to have seen him that I ran upstairs to tell my mum. But before I could even say what I had seen, my mum said, "You just saw him too, didn't you?" So there you have it. I truly believe our old house has some stories to tell, with the presence of a young girl, an unknown dark figure, and of course our beloved cat. There are some aspects of the hauntings that may not ever be explained. However, when moving out of the house last year, we discovered a little detail that may help explain things. As we were getting the house ready to move out and sell, we were stripping the wallpaper in my mother's bedroom. That same room where people often refuse to go inside, and that seemed to have its own distinct unpleasant energy about it. As we tore away the wallpaper, we discovered the names of 3 girls written on the wall beneath. My mum had known the family who she'd purchased the house from, and they didn't have any daughters. So why would the names be on the wall? We were confused by the trio of names written on the walls, and the only reasonable explanation we could come up with was they may have been linked to the presence of the young girl. Perhaps one of these names was hers. Since moving to a different house, we've not had any of these occurrences, not even a picture falling off the wall. I would love to know more about the history of the house I grew up in, but I haven't had much luck in finding anything. It would be great if you or any listener could research further. And there we have the end of Katherine's story, and hopefully This is the end of her experiences with the unknown for good. But only time will tell whether or not her new home will eventually open up to the paranormal like her childhood home. We're left with questions following Katherine's story. How long had these events been taking place before she and her family called attention to it? Were the little girl and the much scarier counterpart always within the foundations of this home, moving silently and unseen until they mustered the energy to interact with the family? Or had something triggered these entities to suddenly manifest in the house? Katherine mentions that she was a teenager when these events began to happen. It has been theorized that teenagers going through puberty can attract paranormal entities, such as poltergeists. Could this explain the pictures falling from the walls and objects vanishing out of thin air? Is there a possibility that the emotional and hormonal changes during adolescence acted as a catalyst for these supernatural occurrences? But why would these events be tied to Katherine and not her sisters? And does it have something to do with her sensitivity to the spiritual? These details make it hard to decipher whether the origins of the haunting are within the house or tied to the family in some way. Another intriguing aspect of Katherine's story is the discovery of the names written on the walls of her mother's bedroom. What is the significance of these names? Could they be the key to understanding the identity of the young girl? Or could they point to a more sinister history that is embedded in the very walls of the house, leading to the unease felt in her mother's bedroom? Moreover, the presence of the shadowy figure adds another layer of complexity to this story. What was the nature of this dark entity? Was it connected to the young girl? Or was it an entirely separate entity drawn to the same source of energy? Was this figure even aware of the family around it? Or was it reenacting something from its own life, oblivious of the discomfort it was causing? The visit from the beloved cat after his passing offers a moment of comfort amidst the unsettling events. This suggests that not all paranormal occurrences are negative. It hints at the possibility of a continued connection with one's family, even after they have passed on. Katherine's story leaves us with a blend of curiosity and caution. It reminds us that the places we hold dear, filled with cherished memories, can sometimes harbor unseen forces that may challenge our understanding of safety and familiarity. Whether these elements are remnants of the past, manifestations of emotional energy, or something else entirely, they invite us to look beyond the surface of our everyday lives and consider the mysteries that might lie beneath. And so, the next time you are relaxing in your family home, in the safety and comfort of its ever-familiar walls, remember that those walls may hold bones of secrets that are beyond your comprehension, and they may choose to reveal those secrets at any moment, and the person to witness them, and the subject of the next short haunt, could be you.